Hi, my name is Megan Durkin, and I will be discussing the opposition to the affirmative's plan to regulate internet pornography. First, I would like to start off with the point that the affirmative is only talking about revenge porn, which is a violation of the resolution since revenge porn is only a small portion of internet pornography and it does not refer to or propose a solution to deal with all issues in internet pornography. Also, it does not propose a plan to solve all revenge porn since revenge porn is not strictly limited to the internet and there is no way to prosecute revenge porn that is offline through the affirmative's proposed plan. Next, the affirmative's solution to revenge porn infringes on the state's rights given in the First Amendment, which is stated by Keith Wagstaff. This is because the laws criminalize victimless instances, such as when there is consent given to take these pictures. Also, it is not considered extortion or blackmail unless the blackmailer is trying to get something from the victim, which is rarely the case, which is discussed by Attorney Mitchell Mattering. Laws that are created and are trying to be enacted are often too broad and will not be voted on to pass by the Supreme Court because they state that it violates the First Amendment's right to free speech. To pass a law to inhibit free speech, the law needs to be suitably clear and narrow. For example, laws that are intended to stop sales of fetish videos showing women crushing kittens to death in high heels or to prevent the hateful Westboro funeral protest to prevent the tolerance of gays in the military were unable to pass because the acts are protected by the First Amendment because they are a matter of public concern, and these protections extend to revenge porn, which is stated by former Judge Andrew Napolitano. An exception to infringing on First Amendment rights would be if the case on child pornography, which the affirmative said nothing about. An article by Aaron Fuchs in the Business Insider talks about when California tried drafting a bill to deal with revenge porn, but it was stopped when the ACLU stepped in, saying that even if the bill was to be passed, it is specific in stating that even if the content was offensive or emotionally distressing, it is still lawful speech or image and is constitutionally protected. There is also no exception for newsworthy instances. The ACLU voiced concern in Should Government Ban Revenge Porn by Jess Armington that a law preventing revenge porn could be used to censor photos with political implications or containing certain evidence to a crime. In this case, a law would be worse because people could want to post pictures of public figures to show their unfitness for office, but would then be prosecuted and the public figure would be considered the victim. Meanwhile, the person was trying to help society as a whole. For example, when a public figure like former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner had implicating pictures of him surface on the internet, he could use a law that bans revenge porn, such as the one proposed by the affirmative, to protect himself from appearing in a compromising situation, which could be more harmful than not having these bans at all. Next, the law criminalizes images which could not be inherently harmful. It is society's reactions that are harmful. The affirmative stated that revenge porn often causes emotional distress and may even cause people to commit suicide. But it is the individual's own decision to react in this way. No one is forcing them to commit these acts. We can resolve the problem of revenge porn through a cultural change that does not involve the risks associated with legal bans. We just need to adequately shame and ostracize the individuals who take part in revenge porn. Next, such laws cannot be enforced on website owners. Revenge porn sites usually have protection, just like Facebook, that prevent third-party platforms from being liable for content generated by their users. Search engines will not remove photos unless they have a copyright, which in most cases people do not have. These search engines will not take it off without copyright because it infringes on free speech. Since these laws would be unable to go after sites, they would then have to go after the individual. But this is difficult because the individuals posting the content are frequently anonymous, which is talked about in Keith Wagstaff's Why It's So Difficult to Ban Revenge Porn. It is even more difficult to find these individuals when a picture goes viral. Therefore, these laws would not work because to prosecute someone, you must have a defendant and evidence, and in cases like this, that is hard to find. No proposed laws are likely to have effect because they are protected by the Communications Decency Act in Section 230, because it states that courts shield sites that host third-party content from liability unless it violates federal laws, such as in the case of child pornography, which is discussed in Fighting Back Against Revenge Porn by the editorial board. Regulations, such as the ones proposed by the affirmative, also denies the victim guilt for initially taking and willingly distributing these pictures. For the example given, Holly Jacobs was over 18 when the pictures were taken, so there's no issue of child pornography here, and she took them herself and gave them to her ex-boyfriend, which shows her consent. This means that these pictures are now her ex-boyfriend's property. In bans on revenge porn, there is a large loophole that states that the person distributing the pictures can only be prosecuted if they were also the photographer of these pictures. The problem is that 80% of the time, the pictures are recorded by the victims themselves. Lastly, the affirmative proposed that the funding to help enact these laws and pay for the FBI to create a task force to prosecute offenders would come from the discontinuance of penny production. But as stated in Why We Need to Keep the Penny in Circulation by Nancy Smith, it is necessary to keep penny production because otherwise the economy would suffer. Everything would become more expensive because prices would have to be rounded to the nickel. Nickels are even more expensive to produce than pennies. It costs more to produce 1 nickel than it would to create 5 pennies. Charities also depend on penny drives to bring in donations since people are more willing to part with their pennies than nickels or any higher denomination of money. The poor would also pay the most because they make more frequent smaller purchases, thus rounding up more often. 2/3 of Americans also want to keep the penny, but lastly and most importantly, ending penny production would cause trouble overnight since everything would be more expensive and paychecks would stay the same. People will then be behind on payments and paychecks would have to catch up. Since halting penny production is unrealistic, this in itself would make the affirmative's plan unable to put into action because they would have no source of funding for the FBI alone, and not even mentioning the additional funding needed for prisons. Since our country has the highest per capita prison population in the world, funding would be inadequate. Therefore, the affirmative's plan would not work due to multiple reasons, and you should not vote for them today.